Whether you like Justin Bieber's music or not, you can't deny the colossal impact he's had on the industry. He's currently tied with Drake for having the most #1 debuts. He's #1 on Spotify in terms of monthly streams. He also recently broke a record by Elvis Presley for being the youngest solo artist to have 7 different #1 albums. In addition, he's the first artist in history to chart #1 on 7 different genre charts. So what explains all of this success, popularity, and persistence? Like, how is he still relevant 10 years after his debut? We're going to look into that.
What's up, everyone? This is Frankly Music, and today we are doing another collab with Kevin, aka Beats Save the World. Now, me and Kevin, we've been discussing a lot lately over, these past 2 weeks. And he's claimed that he has become an expert on knowing Justin Bieber. So, to be quite honest with you, I don't really believe it. And I don't think the audiences should also not believe him. He kind of likes to talk a lot, He has a big mouth. But anyways, let's see if he can prove himself today. All right. So, without further ado, here's Kevin. What's up, Kevin?
All right. I'm pretty good. I'm just ready to drop some knowledge bombs. But before I do that, we should probably explain what we're going to be talking about.
Oh, yes, we will. So, I've sort of compiled a question that I want to ask you, Kevin, and that is, what made Justin Bieber so influential in the 2010s and also the late 2000s? And how do you think that impacted the music industry?
All right. So from my extensive research, I really found like 3 main points about why I think he's been so successful and had so much longevity. So do you want me to start with point number 1?
Sure, go for it.
All right. So the first thing I noticed is that he's always surrounded with amazing people, specifically people who really know marketing. And this began way before you might think. So Justin Bieber's career really began when he entered a singing competition, okay? And he placed 2nd place. And the key thing here, though, was that his mother decided to upload his performance to YouTube. And then his mother continued uploading clips of him performing, him singing, playing guitar, various musical endeavors. And then through doing that, Justin Bieber was able to gain a kind of a following without even the help of a record label or anything. The reason that I bring this up is because it was really Justin Bieber's mother who had the intuition to know how powerful YouTube was, right? It was her that took the initiative to upload her son's performances. In some ways, she was really his manager early on. So I think the fact that his mother was able to see that is a big part of his success. And then, of course, after that, he was discovered by Scooter Braun through his YouTube videos. And then Scooter Braun connected into Usher. And then they kind of co-signed him on their label. And then, of course, through that, they met Island Records. And I think that after that had happened, just the connections that Scooter Braun had, that Usher had, that Island Records had, by being surrounded by all of them, that allowed him opportunities like being on The Ellen Show, being on The Today Show, being on the YTV show, The Next Star. And then all of that, of course, was possible because he was surrounded by such a great advertising team surrounding him, like the people at his record label. So I think that he's always just been surrounded by people who know the industry so well and who are so creative with finding new ways to market. So I think the people he's surrounded with really had a big impact on his success.
Okay, that's interesting. I never thought about it from that perspective, but I like what you said there. So it sounds like to me you're saying that it was almost like everything was just meant to be. It's like, how do I view this? It's how I view it. How I view Justin Bieber's fame, Kevin. I view it as like love at first sight. It's like falling in love. Like when you see that person, that she or he is the one. I think that's really what happened with Justin Bieber. The fact that Scooter Braun found him by accident by clicking his YouTube video without the intention of doing so. And then, of course, one thing led to the next, and he became sort of the star he is today. And I think that those events had to happen at those specific sequences for it to happen. And I think that really is sort of what propelled him to stardom. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, everything happened in the perfect order and at the perfect time.
Correct. Absolutely.
So do you want me to get into my second point?
Sure, go for it.
All right. The next thing I noticed from my research is that, and this is of course pretty clear, Justin Bieber is a polarizing figure. But what I discovered is that isn't always a bad thing. Think about it. If you're a musician who just universally everyone listens to your music and they're like, yeah, it's pretty good. If everyone agrees on what they hear, that's not ideal, in my opinion, because if everyone agrees, then where's the discussion? You know, where are the trolls? Like, where's the argument? Like, where's the controversy? Because all of this discussion about Justin Bieber on the internet and in the news, that just resulted in people hearing his name over and over. So let's start with his music, okay? Songs like Baby, okay? His core fan base just likes that kind of music so much, or at least his core fan base at that time. But other people thought it sounded terrible. And I think this was a good thing because the people who didn't like it weren't his fans anyway. So they were serving a purpose in bringing his name up all the time. I remember an interview with Zakk Wylde, because Zakk Wylde is a guitarist. He played for Ozzy Osbourne. And then when someone asked him, like, what's next? And then he mentioned, like, oh, yeah, well, next we're going to be doing a collaboration with Justin Bieber. He is our leader. He said that as a joke.
I attribute a lot of that to the fact that Justin Bieber wrote the album, and he's our leader. Sorry.
The point is, because so many people like hated this guy, they were bringing up his name over and over. Like, they were mentioning him, being like, oh, isn't this guy terrible? Like, his name was getting dropped constantly, and that wouldn't have happened if he weren't so polarizing. Another thing, his behavior. Of course, he kind of went through a bit of a douchey phase. You know, he apparently threw eggs at his neighbor. He got into fights with paparazzis. He was arrested for driving under the influence. All those things, of course, you know, it doesn't reflect the best on his character, but it got him in the news. And I'm not talking about what makes you a good person, but the fact is that he was in the news so much and people just kept hearing his name over and over and over, and that has an effect in terms of publicity. So I think him being polarizing actually contributed to him being so relevant for so long.
Interesting. And what did you think about some of his behavior? You know, do you think he was an apologetic guy or unapologetic? What do you think?
Yeah. So I think one of his kind of redeeming qualities is that, you know, after he kind of had his phase of all of those mischievous activities, he kind of came out and said, guys, I'm sorry. Like, he did this roast on TV, and he said, I know that I've done a lot of things. And I remember I saw him on the Ellen Show, and he was saying, I've done some things that are not the best.
I turned a lot of people off over the past few years, but I know I can still turn out good music and turn everything all around. You have my word, I will not end up broken, pathetic, bitter, or sitting on the dais of somebody else's roast.
And then I think by apologizing, he was able to redeem himself in some sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Justin Bieber does have a very polarizing audience. I mean, you know, it's very obvious when we were kids, he was very polarizing because, boys like us didn't like him because he was getting out the girls, but then girls loved him. So there's definitely that polarizing effect. And obviously, you know, we didn't like him. I mean, sometimes really didn't, but I'll be honest with you, at least for me, when I was a kid, I just didn't like him because I was just jealous of all the success and all the girls he was getting. So, so that's just sort of my opinion. But yeah, I absolutely think that, you know, he had a very polarizing audience. And you talked about the fact he was very apologetic, you know, with some of his misconduct. What do you think would have happened if he was an unapologetic person?
I think it could have worked in his favor, but it would have been a big risk if he never apologized because, like, to me, in terms of publicity, and this is not like how to be a good person, but in terms of publicity, I think you're going to get the most of it when you're simultaneously loved by your fan base, but also like hated by people who are not your fans. Because if you're just hated by everyone, I think that gets old pretty quickly. Like, you really have longevity when people are saying like, why is this guy so famous? Like, why do people, like, when they don't get it but clearly other people do? That's what creates the debate. So, but if he had kept going down that path of just doing more and more douchebaggy things, I think he might have started to lose his core audience, and at that point we would have less reason to care about him. So like, if he stopped selling tickets, if he were really only known for being like a burnout and he weren't simultaneously someone who could sell out stadiums, like, I think that would have really hurt him. So if he started to lose his core audience because even they couldn't forgive him, I think he could have gone too far, and I think that that would have been a problem.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. What else do you have? Is that it? What else do you have?
So I have one more point, and this is the one that's the most flattering. So this one is really a compliment to Justin Bieber. This point is that he never really stays in one place with his music, okay? He's always adapting it. So let's look at, in my opinion, what the 4 main eras are of Justin Bieber, okay? There was like the preteen era, which is where he had songs like One Time, One Less Lonely Girl, Baby, right? That kind of era where he sounded like very young. And it worked very well because he really appealed to people his age. So there was that era, but if he had just stayed with that the whole time and he had just tried to keep that sound for the next like 10 years, I really don't think that he would have had much longevity. He would have probably like faded from the public eye pretty quickly because it gets old after a while. But he kind of knew that, because if you look, you know, then into the second era of Justin Bieber, where he went from like pre-teen pop to teen pop, you know, like the song Boyfriend is an example of that transition. He sounded more mature, you know, like he was kind of, his music was growing up with him, and then it was also able to fit his fans who were kind of growing up at the same time. And then you had the third era, which was the house music, EDM kind of collaboration with Skrillex era, where he had the album Purpose with What Do You Mean, Sorry, Where Are You Now? I love that song, by the way. And that sound was like very much like catered towards young adults. And it had a very different sound. It was influenced by the huge EDM boom that was going on in that era, in the 2015 era. And then if you look at his music now, you know, going on the album Justice most recently, and then before that the album Changes, now he's been kind of taking from the R&B kind of hip-hop realm and then combining that with his own pop music. So the point is, in all these different eras, he's always adjusting his sound, and it never gets stale because each kind of era of albums is a little bit different, you know? So it's not just like, if you want to hear Justin Bieber, you can just listen to one album, and then if you've heard it once, then you've heard every album, you know? The fact that he kind of just changes his style to fit what's popular, but he still has his own trademark voice and his own sound, I think that really explains why he's had so much longevity.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, wow. I agree. I'll just add on one thing to that, and that is, it's interesting because when you look at the stages of his development, you know, some of his earlier works when he was mostly based in Canada, or at least, you know, when he hasn't been influenced by a lot of the, you know, at least when he hasn't been influenced a lot. How do I say this in a correct way?
You're saying that the United States fucked him up.
Something like that, yeah. But I didn't want to just be that blunt. But anyways, but yeah, I wanted to, exactly, when the US screwed him up. I think it really shows from his work, such as Baby and One Time. But then, you know, throughout the 2010s, when he was in the US, you know, his music reflected, you know, with his album Purpose. You know, he's like trying to find purpose because he's getting into so much trouble. Really hitting a low point in his life, and also just the idea of him, you know, songs like Sorry or What Do You Mean really sort of reflects that. And I think that, you know, when he moved back to Canada right before COVID happened, you know, it sort of went back to him, you know, just really focusing on music and just being a good, genuine person. And of course, when he got married with Hailey Baldwin, that's when I think things really changed. And now he's focused on his music, and his music is getting good and diversified. So, yeah.
Yeah, an interesting theory. So, guys, maybe come to Canada if you want to be your best self. I guess that's what we take away from that, right?
Pretty much. I mean, you know, yeah, come hang out with us, you know. You know, you got to see the Canadian lifestyle. But you just got to say A, that's all. At the end of every sentence.
Yeah, now I remember there was one more part to your question. So I answered kind of part one, but what was part two of your question?
Yeah, you know, there's more to it. I just want to add on that, you know, Justin Bieber really had a huge influence. I mean, you know, like he's one of those big pop stars that pretty much the whole world knows, not just in North America, right? So, you know, he's equivalent to like a BTS or I don't know, like a Michael Jordan or Jackie Chan, you know, like really like international pop star that everyone knows. And of course, his fans are called the Beliebers. And you know, a phenomenon that was really popular back in the day was Bieber fever, which is the notion that, you know, people were idolizing Justin Bieber, especially mostly young teenage girls. And you know, this is the example where, you know, you will see, you know, women just saying, oh my gosh, you know, Justin Bieber touched my hand and I'll never wash it again, you know. Here's a clip of that right there. Right, so you can see it's really it's very evident here how much of a fan those girls used to be. And yeah, that's Bieber fever at its highest right there. So I just wanted to bring that up here. And also one more thing, Kevin, you talked about how do you think his presence impacted the music industry?
I think his biggest impact has been that he started the trend of major musicians being discovered on social media. Okay, so let me go into that a bit further. Dua Lipa, who is currently, I believe, number 3 in the world for Spotify streams, she said that she was inspired by Justin Bieber's discovery on YouTube, and that inspired her to try to get discovered on YouTube. And then Charlie Puth has said pretty much the same thing. Charlie Puth has said he was inspired by Justin Bieber being discovered on YouTube, so he tried to do that as well. So I think that Justin Bieber really showed us that YouTube is a very powerful platform, and social media in general is very powerful. And it doesn't just lead to you being an influencer. Like, Justin Bieber showed us that, like, a lot of the biggest stars of today kind of built their own following on social media first. And then from that, they became more appealing to a record label or something of that sort.
Cool. Well, yeah, I guess that wraps up the documentary of Justin Bieber.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts in the comments. Honestly, I kind of hope that they disagree with me so that we can get some of that polarizing publicity, if you know what I mean.
Cool, absolutely. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Basically, Kevin's trying to say here that, you know, we are about to become famous because we are doing this. And so if this video can get, you know, many likes, we're not asking a lot here, but many likes and many comments, then you can help us reach there.
We can make a deal.
We will thank all of you guys for doing it. So comment below to see whether you agree or disagree with Kevin, and we will see you next time. Peace.
So let's make a deal with the audience. If you can get us to 1,000 likes and you can comment in disagreement, then we will promise you that we'll become ultra stars.
Sure, and we will also continue to make more content, even better content, and we will get better equipment and also everything so we can make even better videos for you guys.
Sounds amazing. I guess that's it then.
Sounds good. Peace.